It's been said the world is shaped by two things: stories told and the memories they leave behind. Robert Follis was considered to be one of the top coaches and minds in the sport of mixed martial arts. He left his mark on world champions and everyday people. This is his story told by some of the people that knew him best. This is the stories of Follis.
How many people would like to know the secret of how to get good fast? Not everybody. I'll give you the secret. It takes a long time to get good fast.
Wait. So my perspective is going to be a lot different than the recent guys. Being around for such a long time, being around almost literally from day one with him, uh, because during our journey, we were both trying to figure ourselves out. I was trying to figure out myself as a fighter. He was trying to figure out if he wanted to be a fighter or if he was going to go into coaching. And then when he kind of made that jump into coaching, then it was trying to figure out his style and what kind of coach he was going to be, because there was a lot of trial and error, and by far most of everything that he did was incredible, was awesome, was the right thing at the right time. But there were moments where, clearly looking back, we could have done some things differently. But that just like anything was just part of the growing process and him trying to figure himself out and his style. And I think again that kind of goes back to the upbringing of a Jehovah's Witness, where you're told black and white who you are, what you believe, what movies you can watch, what music you can listen to, what books you can read, what friends you can have, what family you can associate with. Now when you leave all of that behind, you're kind of a blank slate. And imagine being a blank slate when you're 20 years old with no family to fall back on. All your beliefs are now gone and you're trying to fill that void. And I think Robert, in the process, always reading everything he could get his hands on, always talking to people, trying it out quite a bit to figure out what worked best for him, what worked best for the athletes. But there was one time specifically after I fought Shoney Carter, and I won by TKO in the first round. We left the dressing room. We went into the back hallway and hugged each other. And he said, "From my perspective, this is your first UFC fight." I'd fought Loden Sincade in the Tough One finale, but now I was fighting someone that had almost 10 times as many fights as I had. I'd been watching on TV since before I started fighting. And now I stepped up to Shoney Carter and he's able to get the win. And I looked at Robert and I said, "Without you, I wouldn't be here." Plain and simple. Because there was so many times where I was ready to call it quits. The first time and the potentially the biggest time was show up to a Sunday morning jiu-jitsu practice, just rolling around with everybody, and Randy Couture was there, and he catches me in an armbar, and I'm defending the old school way. I'm just holding my hands together, and I go to release and hitchhike and escape, and Randy extends my arm, and before I can tap, he thrusts his hips forward and rips my right pectoral off the bone. And it was so painful. It was an out of body experience. I saw myself from above shaking on the mat. And so I go to the doctor and I get diagnosed. Yeah, your pectoral has been torn off. So I've got this big 3-inch, 4-inch scar where they grabbed it and put it back on together. And that was devastating for many, many reasons. Here I am, a young man getting a first major surgery from an injury from a sport that I don't even know if this is something I would want to continue. What is this really getting me? And then Robert he wouldn't let me go through this alone. He said, "No, you'll get through this. I'm here for you. What do you need? How can we talk this through?" And encouraging me to get back into the gym, to do the training that I could, to reevaluate, figure out really who am I? What do I want to do with my future? And that was one of the biggest things that kind of pulled me back in. And I'll always be forever grateful for that and his friendship.
The number one secret I can tell you of really, really getting good at anything is called attrition. Are you going to be here tomorrow? Are you going to be here the next day? Are you going to be here here the day after? Are you going to be here the day after? And I'm here to tell you, don't worry, there'll be some problems. Somebody will not want you to come. Money problems will come up. And the question always is going to be is your goal set strong enough that you really know why you want it and what you want out of it?
Yeah, so I first met Robert in 1997 at Straight Blast. My brother trained there. I trained with him a couple times. It wasn't until maybe 3 years later, though, that I started at Team Quest. My brother called me, said he was working on a car lot, and Randy Couture and Matt Lindland were kicking the shit out of each other in the back. I said, "What? I'm on my way." Ran in the front door and ran into Robert Follis. He didn't have to say much, you know. I signed up immediately, and I was there every single day, you know, and Robert brought me from 0 fights to the UFC. You know, he changed my life, you know, mentored me both in and outside the game.
Now, what I love about doing something like this is not that what we do in here has necessarily any kind of big intrinsic value when we leave. Being able to choke somebody out doesn't come up a lot outside of here, right? I don't know about you guys, but I'm not getting scraps every day. And if you are, take a look at your life. You're doing something wrong. There's no reason to be in fights in Portland. No reason to be defending yourself every day. So the intrinsic value of what we do in here, to me, is called spillover. Because how you do anything is how you do everything. I'm going to say that again. How you do anything is how you do everything.
So I was with them at original Straight Blast Gym, and then him and Randy and Henderson and those guys ended up opening Team Quest. So I followed him over to Team Quest, and then that's when my career was being fantastic. I was dominating guys when I was with him, and then when I had moved to Vegas and was kind of doing my own thing, that's where my career kind of had my up and downs, and then he came to Vegas and became a part of us, but I was done fighting at that time, so that didn't really help me as far as a fighter at that time.
So if you come in here, you bore easily, you don't push yourself when it's hard, you just want to learn a lot of techniques, you don't want to become a master of them, your life probably looks similar, almost always. If you quit this, you're going to quit most other things, if it's what you want to do. Now, if you don't want to do it, that's different. But if your goal really is to get good, the thing that's going to spill over is when you stay through the challenges, not quit with the challenges. That's the biggest difference. You see the guys that are fighting in the UFC, they've just mostly been doing it longer.
Robert Follis was a different individual. You know, we called him the wizard in a sense because, like, he wasn't necessarily going to be your best striking coach or your only jiu-jitsu coach, but he put everything together so well and in such a way, and all the in-betweens in fighting and things that were specific to a fight rather than just martial arts in general. And he did so in a way that everybody was able to understand it. His ability to, you know, remember things, and, you know, whether it be quotes to get points across or philosophies, to reinforce his coaching ideas. It was almost like he had a photographic memory.
It's just about hours. That's it. You can do it over a longer course of time, or you can time compress it, but it's about that commitment. The cool thing is, why we look up to people who get so good at sports is not just what they did in that sport, it's because we know that kind of dedication applied to anything equals magic.
Known Coach Follis a long time before he moved out from Vegas to Vegas. He was at Team Quest. He would come out and help out with some of the guys, and obviously with Dennis Davis and him had a really great relationship. So when Coach Follis moved out here, it just seemed like a perfect fit, man. Like, we had to get this guy in the gym. He immediately raised the level of the gym. He immediately challenged all of us as coaches and fighters. He set a standard. He helped us set a standard. It wasn't his standard. And he said that. He said, look, I don't want to set a standard that I believe in. I want to set a standard that all of us as a team want to uphold. And, you know, I learned so much from that man. He taught me so many things about life. He taught me so many things about MMA. He believed in me in so many different ways than other guys didn't. He challenged me constantly. I feel like Coach Follis always got the best out of you, and he found ways to do so. So I think where I'm at in my career now, I believe like I'm a product of him, and I hope to carry on that lineage as best as I can.
Robert Follis was just, he's like one of the most selfless guys ever. And, you know, like you said, he wasn't a striking coach, wasn't really a wrestling coach. He was an MMA coach. And there's so few and far between. And even when he was coming up, he started Team Quest with a lot of the guys, Dan Henderson, Chael Sonnen, Randy Couture, and moved over to Las Vegas with Randy Couture to start up Extreme Couture. And he kind of was one of the pioneers of what it meant to be an MMA coach. The sport was still brand new and still growing so much that that spot wasn't even really defined yet. Everybody just kind of specialized in one thing or another. He still had his specialties and his style that he liked to stick to, but I say he was a true overall MMA coach, and you just don't find him these days.
When I first met Robert Follis, I was on the set of The Ultimate Fighter season 24. It was the flyweight season. My coaches was Joseph Benavidez, Eddie Baraka, and that was the first time that I'd ever met Robert Follis. He was such an amazing coach for many reasons. For me, it was how he talked to the fighters and how he could relate. He could relate to the guys, even dumb guys like me. He could do analogies that could really unlock and make things easy to understand. So I think that's one of the things that really made him such an amazing coach. I have so many great Robert Follis stories and memories. One of my favorites was during The Ultimate Fighter, the season where we met. I had to make weight 4 times in 4 weeks. I'd already been there for several weeks, but after making 125 on 3 Tuesdays in a row, on the last Tuesday, would have been my last weight cut for the finale of The Ultimate Fighter. I was really struggling. I was about in tears. It wasn't worth it to me at that point. I was done. I was ready to quit, and he told me a joke. And when he told me the joke at the time, I didn't really understand what it meant. But after hearing the joke, I felt like I could have sat in there for another few hours. Laughter truly is one of the best medicines, and I attribute a lot of my success, not just in The Ultimate Fighter, but from there on out. After meeting him, I owe a lot of my success to Robert Follis.
I first met Robert Follis probably back in about 2015, 2016 when I first moved to Vegas. And you just kind of knew when you walked into the room that he was like the dude. He just had this way about him that when he walked into the mat, you better be on time, your gloves better be on, and you better have duct tape around him so you don't scratch your partners. He had certain rules and certain things, he wanted things, and if you didn't, he had certain ways of doing things that if you weren't doing it that way, like that wasn't okay. But he didn't really have to like yell at us or get us in trouble or anything. You just knew, like if you wanted to be one of the best in the world, you just knew you had to do what he said. And I mean, he led Misha Tate to a world title, and he led several people to championships and winning and succeeding and believing in themselves. One of my favorite stories with Robert Follis is I took a fight on 16 days notice to fight Sarah McMahon, kind of a big step up. And I was doing one of my sparring sessions. I was in the cage and there was a lot of pressure and I was cutting a lot of weight and I just felt like garbage. And I got in the cage and I was sparring and I was doing just fine, but I was just feeling emotional. And I stopped in between one of my rounds. I just started crying. I was crying and making a big thing of it. And I had 3 coaches around, and one of the coaches is like, "Gina, get your act together. Come on, let's go." And I was like, "Woo," still crying. The other one was like, "Gina, it's okay." And I was like, "Woo," still crying. And then Falls is like, hey, and like push everyone away and is like, just let her cry. So I cried and got my shit together, and then just kind of got a pat on the butt and sent me back out there, and everything was fine. He was, I think one of the really special things about Follis is that he, in particular, knew how to deal with women, which a lot of coaches have a hard time because women have so much emotions, and Follis was somehow able to relate to us in that way and make things not as terrible as they really thought they were. I miss that guy, and I want to blame a lot of my success and a lot of my mindset on him.
What made Follis a terrific coach was his mind game, his physical game, and his spiritual game. And he really took it a step further than most of your coaches. Anybody can go hold pads for you. but Follis would look at you as a person and dive deep into your soul and say, why do you want to fight? How bad do you want to win? And once you answered those questions, he would help you get there. He wouldn't always come in and tell you what to do. He would lead you to the good questions, and he'd help you answer them. And I think that's what made him a terrific coach, was that he went a step further and saw the game as a whole and looked at your life, and he helped you become a better fighter and a better person.
Answering text messages and phone calls night and day. It didn't matter the hour of the day or night. If someone needed something from him, you know, he was there. And sometimes he'd be the one to reach out because he could sense that they needed something, or if he noticed something off in the person's response, he would reach out. He was really good at keeping contact when other people wouldn't want to, and he was really good at keeping people accountable, and not just his fighters, but his friends and people that he wanted better for. And so yeah, I think a lot of people don't necessarily realize how much sacrifice some coaches make for their athletes and, you know, for their fighters. And I know that's not necessarily like even across the board, but I know for him, especially the things that drew him to be a coach, that drew him to want to be a coach in the first place, it was very personal for him. And Nate has probably said this too, but in a lot of ways, I think by helping people be better versions of themselves, I think he was also looking to heal himself. So
I ended up getting a fight for the WEC, and my cornerman last minute couldn't show up. All of them. I literally had no cornerman. So Coach Follis was there cornering Dave Jansen, and you know, I said, hey Coach, you want to help me out? And of course, like Coach Follis, he's willing to help anybody out. And you know, awesome guy, man. So he actually helped corner me for that fight. I fought Mark Hominick, and I remember I was so nervous. I was throwing up everywhere, just crazy. And I remember going up to, this was all day before I even got to the fight, you know, to the fights at the stadium. And I remember he pulled me aside and said, hey, if we're going to make up the future and we're going to pretend that we know what the future is, why don't we make it up in our favor? If we're going to think all these bad things can happen, we're going to think, you know, oh, what if I get knocked out? What if this? What if that? He goes, what if you go out there and knock this guy out? What if you go out there and take this guy down and choke him in 30 seconds? What if you have a highlight reel? If we're going to dictate and make up stories that haven't happened yet, why don't we make them up in our favor?
When you're a coach, you're agreeing to care 100% for the guy that you're coaching. And you are second. Follis would take the time to do anything and everything that was required that fighter need. So, you know, he was a mentor, he's a father figure, he was advice and voice of reason. He would call you all the time and check in, and he did all those things very well.
Knew how to believe in his fighters almost more than they believed in themselves, and it's something that not a lot of coaches, you know, really take the time to you know, open their heart to their fighters and to, you know, be there when they need them, and just really bring them up to a level to where they just feel so confident. Again, his confidence in me is what helped me with my confidence in myself.
I think he was good. He knew a lot about fighting, but he also understood fighters. Most fighters are mental cases, and fighting is something that mentally hard, and he knew how to approach fighters. Every fighter is different, and you know how to get to them. And I think that's why that was one of his best attribute.
His brother committed suicide. His family got together for the first time in many, many years. And they went out to the Oregon coast and were spending time together. And they said that it was just a great, enjoyable time. Well, the weekend came to an end, and Robert almost viewed it. Robert had told me once before, or a few times before, he felt like his purpose was to reunite his family. Like that was what he was going to do, to bring his mother and father back into loving his brother and his sister. And when Robert's other brother committed suicide, that was kind of the opportunity to bring the family back together and reunite. And it lasted for a weekend. And the last time he saw them, his father looked at him and said, well, I don't think we'll be doing this again until you decide that you want to come back into the Jehovah's Witnesses faith. And it was just devastating. Here you have someone who's traveled around the world, who is known around the world, who's been in the corner of how many world champions, how many title fights, that is beloved by everyone that meets him, having his own parents say, we're not going to see you again unless you abandon everything you've built your entire life and live your life the way we think you should. That is what drove him to suicide.
I came home from work one day and I realized that he hadn't responded to any of my texts. Not that I was texting him a lot throughout the day, but I would normally hear from him, throughout the day. I got home and he wasn't home. I sent him a text message. It's like, hey, where you at? And it didn't go through. And then my mind started going because, I'd thought about the changes that were happening, in the weeks and days prior. I reached out to his brother and some other friends to see if they'd heard from him. I checked his Facebook page and realized that he had taken his Facebook page down. And I knew that Facebook to him was really important for business as a coach. So him taking it down was the biggest red flag for me because I knew what it meant for him. And it was kind of at that moment that I knew what was going on. And so the next few days were hell. I tried to find him. I had kind of told myself, well, until I heard differently, I would assume that he went on a road trip to clear his head, because sometimes he would do that, but he never left without telling me. And so finally, his brother and I went to file a missing persons report. And when his brother called to file the report, they transferred his call to a couple places and they had found his body that morning. And so when I got the phone call from Rick, I was at home. And I knew before I got that phone call, because there were so many things that were unlike Robert. Like I searched the house for if he went on a road trip, what would he have taken with him? He would have taken this, he would have taken that. I looked for missing backpacks, clothes, shoes, anything that told me that he was going to be gone for a few days. And he was actually supposed to have left for Canada to corner Tim Elliott in a fight that week. And I thought, well, maybe he went on a road trip and he's going to take off from there, because he would never let a fighter down. Then I found his passport, and I knew he never planned on going to Canada.
When I first found out Robert Follis had passed away, I was actually in Canada for one of my UFC fights. He asked me to move his plane tickets back from the Tuesday to the Thursday before the fight, because Brian Caraway was going to have a fight, so he was going to miss the Tuesday and come out later. Brian Caraway's fight had fell through for some reason, and I talked to Follis right before that, and he asked me to pay to get the flight moved back to Tuesday. So I paid some money. I had the flight moved back to Tuesday. He never showed up on the Tuesday. We went all the way through to the weigh-ins. The day before weigh-ins, I had found out that I was calling people from Canada and trying to figure out where he was at, what was going on, and everybody back in Las Vegas thought that he was in Canada with me. And I was there with Megan O'Leary, I think, was the first person that I talked to. That is when I really found out that he was gone and he wasn't with us anymore.
I get a call from Joseph Benavidez, I think it was, and he said, "Hey, have you heard from Coach Follis?" And I said, "No, he flew out to work with Tim." And he's like, "No, he hasn't. He missed his flight. He didn't show up." And I was like, "Well, what do you mean? This is the most punctual human being I've ever met in my life. The guy's never on time. If you're early, you're late still." And I was like, "That's not right. Something had to have happened." And he's like, "I know this. What's going on?" And I started digging around and calling people, and yeah, he just didn't show up even to weigh-ins. He wasn't there by that time. No one, he didn't even make it. He was supposed to fly out, I think, Thursday. Weigh-ins were Friday. It was Friday that he said, yeah, he missed the weigh-ins. He didn't miss his flight. And I said, well, did he call Tim and tell him what's going on? And he said, no, Tim hasn't heard from him. Nobody heard from him. Nobody's answering their phones. You're the only person that answering their phones. No one's going on. And I just had this gut feeling where it literally felt like I just literally got stabbed in the stomach. And because I knew that something bad happened. And that time I just started calling around. I ended up calling Misha and saying, hey, blowing her up. And I said, called her and, hey, what is happening? And she told me, Coach Follis had taken his own life. And it was really hard. Man. Sorry. I felt like I lost my best friend. And
I was very close with Follis. I understood a lot of the things going on in his life. I understood a lot of the darkness that was ensuing. And, we tried to help, man. We tried to do the best we could, and I don't think it was enough. I don't think we talked enough. I don't think, I miss him, man, and I wish we could have done more. I wish we were on better terms. And I was at home. I was having dinner. I was actually feeding my son, and I got a call from Brian Caraway. He called me and he said, "Hey," he was just hysterically crying, and he said, "Hey, did you know? Did you hear?" And I didn't understand what he was talking about. And then through his crying, he said, "Hey, Coach Follis passed away." And immediately, my heart sunk and just felt an overwhelming rush of guilt. That I wasn't there. That I wasn't there for him.
My brother fought that night in Michigan, and it was his third professional fight, and it was a big fight for him because he had came off a split decision loss. So it meant a lot for us to go over there and win. And Chael Sonnen texted me as we warming up, and he's like, "You got a free minute?" And I'm like, "No, we getting ready to walk out for his fight." And he's like, "Call me after." Keith wins the fight, TKO in the first round. We go for the celebration, kind of sitting around the bar enjoying, and kicking it. And I remember, okay, I got to call Chael. I call him and he kind of breaks the news to me. And just right out the bat, you want to talk about like the highest high, seeing my brother win means more than even when I win. And then seeing my brother from another mother, really, to see him die on that same night, and especially through suicide and the way he did it. It was that was rough. That took a while to get over.
There's a quote that says, "We all have inner demons to fight. We call these demons fear, hatred, anger. If you don't conquer them, then a life of 100 years is a tragedy. If you do, a life of a single day can be a triumph." Robert Follis' time on this earth was cut short. The list of people whose lives were changed by him is long. Robert Follis will be remembered in the sport as one of the great minds. His memories and legacy will always live on.